Hello, friends and family. I want to thank you for joining me for this John and June. I've had a nice break. I didn't make the videos for Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, as you probably know. It was really good to hear from three of our missionaries, wasn't it? It was Joel on Monday in Senegal. Tuesday was Dan, and he was coming from Peru. And then Wednesday, Jacob Berlin, who's a missionary in, I always forget, Bangladesh, or as it's actually pronounced, Bangladesh. I learned that from them, by the way. So we heard from him on Wednesday, and I think he was in Alaska making the video. So hopefully you were blessed. I know I was blessed to hear from them and their insight and get an update on what is going on with them. I hope that I will do a better job, that we will do a better job of remembering to pray for them. So anyway, so we're on John chapter 18 today. As Jacob said yesterday, that John chapter 17 was essentially the end of a long section of Jesus talking and praying and teaching, and then now it's going into the narrative of Jesus's ultimately death, burial, and resurrection. And so this is heavy stuff. This is amazing stuff. But I did want to point out one thing that I love. Right prior to this, Jesus prays for you and me. Did you catch that? Verse 20 of his high priestly prayer, he says, "My prayer is not for them alone," talking about his disciples at that time. He says, "I pray also for those who will believe in me." And so I love that we who belong to him are those who belong to him and who believe in him. And he's praying for us. And if we ever needed Jesus's prayers right now, and what we are going into, I believe, is we need his prayers desperately. Okay, so Jesus is now going into an amazing moment. Verse 3, it says that, Jesus he's already in the garden with his disciples. Judas comes, and it says they were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Can you just put yourself into that place for a moment? Imagine it's nighttime, it's dark, and a mob of men are approaching you. This is a time before much law enforcement and being able to call 911. They are approaching you, and they are carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. This would have been a frightening scene. But what happens? Well, besides what Jesus says and does, which is amazing, and how he basically says, "I'm Yahweh, I am God," when he says, "I am," to their question, and they fall back, and he asks them again. Peter, what does he do? He strikes one of the servants of the high priest and cuts off his ear. He's so full of boldness and confidence and courage at this point, right? That he would do that when there is a whole host of essentially men that could take him down in a heartbeat, and yet he does that to protect Jesus. And I bring this up because what happened to Peter? What happened in that moment, from that moment to the moment when he would deny even knowing Jesus, right? Because here he strikes the ear, he cuts off the ear, Jesus heals the servant. But then he follows Jesus with most likely John. John's not named in this gospel, but it's most likely John here. John and Peter follow Jesus from a distance. John knows the high priest and is allowed to go into the courtyard. John comes back, talks to the servant girl. They allow Peter to come into the courtyard as well and wait. And the servant girl, as they're letting him in, she says, "Aren't you one of his disciples as well?" And to a servant girl, he says no. He denies and lies about even knowing Jesus, when just however many minutes or hours before that, he was so bold that he would put his own life at risk by cutting off somebody's ear, by striking them. I mean, if he was trying to kill them. You don't accidentally strike somebody's ear off. He was trying to kill them. And now he's denying knowing Jesus. He's afraid to even say he knows Jesus to a servant girl. To me, that is remarkable. What happened to Peter? This just goes to show me how much we need God. You know, that we could in one moment be bold and proud and raising the banner of Jesus, and then the next moment act as if we don't even know him. I think that's the human struggle. And I think that just goes to show you how desperately we need God all the time. As I was thinking about this, I started singing, Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. I realized again, as I realize so often, which I hope is something you realize so often, is how desperately you need the help of God. Now, this goes into basically Jesus being on trial. And I want to point out the fact that Jesus, he tiptoes the line here. When he's being confronted, he tiptoes the line of not being arrogant, of being sure to speak the truth, but doing it in such a way that it's just enough to get himself killed. In other words, Jesus had to be careful to not be so meek and mild and humble and kind and careful as to not offend. Because if he were to do that, then they might not have crucified him. He had to speak the truth. He had to do it in a way that may have come across in a way that said that he was brash, or maybe possibly they were thinking arrogant, in order to make sure that the plans of God were not thwarted, that he would be crucified for us. Now, a couple other things I wanted to point out. And that is that Barabbas is mentioned here again at the end. And Barabbas is released. The insurrectionist is released. All four Gospels mention Barabbas. Why? I really believe it's because it's supposed to remind us that Jesus came to trade places with the criminal. And that we are the criminal. We are the ones who have joined in with humanity in an uprising against God by saying, we don't need you, we got this. First Adam and Eve, and then we've continued to carry that tradition. And here we see that just like Barabbas was released because of Jesus trading places, we are able to be released by trading places and letting Jesus take our sin upon himself. Such good news. And I want to kind of illustrate that by sharing, we just had our anniversary trip and it was amazing. And our first night as we headed up to Snoqualmie, long story short, there was a baby deer that was caught on the interstate. There was those Jersey barriers, those big cement blocks. This baby deer had gotten into the interstate but couldn't get back out. So it was caught between these two cement blocks on either side of the interstate. We ended up seeing this baby deer trying to get out of there. We went to the next exit. We circled back around to see if it was still there, and it was still there, running up and down the interstate. Another car had stopped trying to help, and in fact, they did. They helped get one of its siblings over the barrier to its mom that was waiting on the other side. I was able to chase it down, eventually jump with my arms on it, wrap it up, and then we released it over the barrier. And I just wanted to mention this because to me it's such a perfect illustration of the fact that we are caught between two truths. One truth, that we are sinners and there's nothing we can do about that. And two, God is a holy God and we are separated from him, just like that baby deer is separated from his mom. And we need rescue, just like that baby deer. And just like that baby deer runs, we run. So often when God wants to rescue us. And thanks be to God that he caught us. If you're watching this video, I trust that you know Jesus, you've been caught. He's rescued you. He has released you. and you are free. And I thank God for that fact. I thank God for that fact, and I hope you do as well. God bless you. Thanks for joining me for this video.